20th, 2018 meeting of the Palm Springs City Council. Whenever everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please place your hand over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. City Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Holstedge.
Present.
Councilmember Coors. Councilmember Middleton.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Roberts.
Present.
Mayor Moon.
Here.
All members are present.
Okay, thank you very much. City Manager, do we have any presentations?
There are no presentations this evening, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Acceptance of the agenda. The City Council will at this time discuss the order of the agenda and may amend the order, add urgency items, note abstentions or no votes on consent calendar items, and request consent calendar items be removed for discussion. I would like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda. Are there any items any council member would like removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and or vote? Councilmember Middleton.
I would like to remove item 1D as in David, 1I as in Ivan, 1M as in Mary.
Okay, one Delta, one India, one Mike. Okay, Councilmember Coors.
Those were mine, so nothing additional.
Okay, D, I, and M. Anyone else?
Mayor, I would like to remove item 2E, the cannabis-related, the fees. We will, on that one, we would open the public hearing, but we would not receive testimony. We would move it to, continue it to the next meeting. And then also, Mayor, 4C, I would like to remove that from the agenda. There's no action needed from council on that this evening, and that would come back at a later meeting.
Okay, very well, thank you. Council Mayor Pro Tem?
No, I just want to make a motion beyond that.
Oh, okay.
But I can't.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda as amended with the following items pulled from the consent calendar? Item 1D, 1I, and 1M.
I can't make a motion.
And also items 2E and 4C will be continued or rescheduled for another time.
There.
Wait, it cleared.
It's working now.
We're not getting anything on the screen, and we can't make an electronic motion. Did you get motions?
Try it again. There you go.
Okay. Motion's been made
now
by
it's
Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Holstedge. Motion is on the floor.
So 2E is 2 times.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, report of closed session. Mr. Cochran.
Thank you. I'm trying to get the microphone on. All right. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We had an extensive closed session agenda, and we were able to cover both matters of existing litigation. We were able to cover 6 matters of the 8 noticed regarding anticipated litigation, including the one noticed by name. We were only able to take on one of the initiation of litigation matters. We did not have time for the public employee performance evaluations noticed. We did take up property addresses as follows: 233 West Tramview Road, Lot 38 El Dorado Road, 1433 and 1455 North Indian Canyon Drive, and the northeast corner of intersection of South Bilardo Road and West Baristo Road. The other real estate matters we did not have time to consider, and we did in fact confer with our labor negotiator. I anticipate that pursuant to an offer by opposing counsel, the Smith versus Altaverde case is in fact settled at this point. We haven't reduced it to writing, but we anticipate the documents will come in shortly. The amount of the settlement is $35,000, half of that being paid by the city and half of that being paid by our partner Veolia. That concludes my report of action in closed session. Apart from the settlement, no reportable action was taken. We may be convening back to closed session on another matter within the discretion of the council, but that depends on how busy we are and the council's wish.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Next item, public testimony for non-public hearing agenda items only. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council only on agenda items. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. Testimony for public hearings will only be taken at the time of the hearing, and general public comments on non-agenda items will be taken later in the meeting. So our first speaker is Chris Hector, followed by Nikki McLaughlin, then John Pavelak, and then Les Young. Wait just a second. There it is. And I've got to change
Testing.
the time too.
Okay. Again, my name is Chris Hector, representing Indigo Auto Group, Porsche Cars, Palm Springs. As you know, we are bringing the Porsche dealership from Rancho Mirage to Palm Springs. We are currently under construction, and we are anticipating a predetermined completion date of the end of this year, all preferenced on a very unique opportunity that the Porsche Cars of America are holding their worldwide dealer meetings in Palm Springs in the Coachella Valley coming up, and we'll be seeing this new dealership at its completion. I'm here tonight to request an early start date for two of the summer months when we are going to be erecting most of the steel framework. We will have the roof on the building per schedule by the end of August, at which time we will have shade and be underneath it. We have currently or previously contacted our neighbors next door, the Horizons Mobile Home Park, and spoke with their two managers, Carla and Dee, and told them of our request and wanted to get some feedback from them. They both came back 2 days later and told us they talked to their people there, and there was no complaints about that at that time from their members. So I'd like to request that we could start staging between 5:30 and 6, not constructing, staging, and start our constructions at 6 a.m. for those 2 months. If you have any questions, I'll be here to answer them at that time.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Hector. Next speaker is Nikki McLaughlin, followed by John Pavelak, and then Les Young, and then Richard Rafferty.
Good evening, Mayor, staff, and City Council. Could be a little interesting. I picked up my friend's prescription glasses instead of my readers. I'm here this evening on behalf of Friends of Palm Springs Mountains, and I'd like to address the public benefit portion of item 4A. The general plan requires a transfer of residential density from other areas in the city when land designated as open space in the general plan is converted to a different use. Either paying a fee or transferring land to the city can accomplish this. The developer chose the option of paying a fee to allow the city to acquire open space in the Chino Cone in the amount of $3 million, and the city allocated the amount towards the purchase of a 190-acre parcel that abuts the lower portion of the Chino Canyon Natural Preserve, formerly Shadow Rock. This parcel has a willing seller and is the final piece of the puzzle that will unite Friends' current land ownership with the city's, hereby attaining our combined goal to preserve the canyon. Delaying the purchase jeopardizes the goal of completing this project. Friends is requesting that the developer be held to their agreement of this payment with a date set by the council this evening. There is time value to money. $3 million today will buy more land than $3 million in 3 years, 6 years, or dribbling on over 20 years, even with an interest penalty. Please do not extend this payment. Please do not permit the payments to be contingent on future lot sales that could literally take the entire 20-year term. The intent of the density transfer is to preserve open space, not to benefit developers. It needs to be thought of as part of the purchase price, not a cost to be amortized against the future cost of the homes. This is an action that has been made on several past projects that provides a benefit to the developer and is not in the public interest. The usual argument is that money is not available or the bank will not provide the loan. But in reality, the truth is it makes their land less valuable with this expense up front, thereby denying them the ability to make significant profit when they resell, which is often the case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is John Pavelak, followed by Les Young, then Richard Rafferty, and then John Belemjan.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and staff. My name is John Pavlak. I'm with Watermark Homes. I'm here to speak on two items here, as I think the clerk mentioned, to be combined on two. One is 4A, ratification of the tentative map. That's with the Serena Park agreement. We wanted to speak in favor of it. Is what we know about it. It's a great agreement, and we look forward on building there with Eric Taylor on the project there. We thought it's turned out great land plan and so forth, so I wanted to speak in favor of that there. Second was the 5C, approval of your resolution authorizing the California Statewide Communities Development Authority to form a community facilities district. I've spoke here in the past on that. It's the SKIP program, and it involves, improvement district, and we do have one there at Mountain Gate that's worked out real well. It was a big help, in getting, financing for the project and for the home buyers there. So I was, was elated to see that this was coming up for a possible approval there. So wanted to, mention that we're in very support of those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pavelak. Next speaker is Les Young, followed by Richard Rafferty, then John Belemjan, and then Doug Jones.
Mayor Moon, Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem, JR, and council and staff. My name is Les Young, and I am a member of the board of the Four Seasons HOA. They're going to be talking to you a little bit later on this evening, or I guess shortly, regarding the Serena Park project. While I am a member of the board, I have recused myself from all conversations the board has held, either publicly or privately, regarding the topic because I sit as the chair of Parks and Recreation, and I believe the situation that's being discussed is open land that is within 500 feet of my property, and therefore I chose to recuse myself. I just wanted that on public record.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Young. Next speaker is Richard Rafferty, followed by John Belemjan, then Doug Jones, then T. Jones. Okay, Mr. Rafferty, not here. John Belemjan, then Doug Jones, T. Jones, then Santina Miath. Yep.
Council members, my name is Doug Jones, born and raised in Palm Springs, and is that it? Okay. Oh, okay, all right. I really want to see you work with the developer on this. I grew up down here, and before Four Seasons was at the end of Sunrise, it was like a little dump back there when I was a kid, and you had the little golf course. What Four Seasons has done is wonderful, and what Serena Park will do will be even better. And I agree with the woman about buying the land for the Chino Cone. It's all a good thing. But please work with the developer to make this happen, and don't strangle it to where it won't happen. That way, the people that live on that end of town can get what they need. It's a blighted area, and it really needs Serena Park. This would be a very good development for the community. And I know you're spending the money in a good area, but you may strangle the developer to where he can't do this. So please give him the opportunity to explain and try to make this thing work for the community within that area and Palm Springs in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next speaker is T. Jones, and then Santina Meth, and then Adrienne Leonard, and then Mahaley Leonard.
T. Jones is my wife, and we thought she was going to be speaking a little later, so she's en route, so I think she's going to miss it.
Okay, thank you. Then Santina Meth, and then Adriana Leonard, then Mihaly Leonard, then Jim Rush. Santina, you here? Matt? Okay, Adriana Lenart? Adriana Lenart, okay, then Mihaly Lenart. Oh, wow. Okay, then Jim Rush.
Well, good evening, council members, Mayor Moon, council members. I'm Jim Rush. I'm the general manager at Four Seasons. I know we've all had a chance to meet and talk. I'm here actually to present the council with a petition from Four Seasons. We've got 194 signatures here. Real quick, a couple of things I just want to read off the petition. Some of the advantages of the Serena Park project. A community of homes will replace a defunct Palm Springs Golf Course, which is an abandoned, blighted community or a blighted area, which I know the city wants to get rid of. This development will be converted into a housing development with private funds. With 386 homes, there will be an increase in city revenue, certainly. It will also increase business and income for restaurants. It will serve as a rejuvenation to the northern part of the city, which that area definitely needs. There is an excess of 500 tamarisk trees that are going to get removed, which has caused property damage to us, to our community. And I'm very intimate with that, with some of the property damage that those trees have caused. So I'm presenting this petition with 5 copies of the petition and all the signatures here to your city clerk. And then I just want to say one other thing. Negotiations are a hard thing. And every party's got to come together. I did see some of the note information that you provided to Eric Taylor, or part of the agenda, and he also provided the note information he provided to you. You guys did make a move, and I think that's great that you've made a move to try to get this resolved. And we've already had a discussion with Eric Taylor earlier today, and I think it's important that both parties come together on this. I'm a bit surprised that we're doing it in an open forum like this. It'll be interesting what the outcome is, and I'll probably be watching it on TV tonight. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Next speaker is Matthew Haveram, and then Eric Taylor, then Mark Allen, and then Joan Taylor. If anyone else wishes to speak, please turn a card into the city clerk at this time. Matthew Haveram, are you here? Okay, then Eric Taylor. This is public comments on agenda items, not public hearings and not general items. This is anything that's on the agenda, either on the consent calendar or the regular calendar, except not public hearings.
This isn't the hearing. This is just comments on.
This is just public comments of 2 minutes each. If you want to speak on a public hearing item, if you're the developer and it's the public hearing, it's not a public hearing, no. You have 2 minutes.
Well, we can bring you back up, but at this point, you just get
Okay, you're Mr. Haveram? Okay. Next speaker is Eric Taylor, then Mark Allen, then Joan Taylor. Okay, so Mark Allen, Joan Taylor, you don't get to speak later on this.
unless we call you up, so this would be the time to talk on that.
Okay, where are we on this? Mr. Haveram? Okay, Mr. Haveram, you have 2 minutes.
Council members, thank you for your time. I'm Matthew Haveram. I'm one of the owners of Serena Park. I've been involved with this project since inception in January of 2012. A lot has changed since then, and a lot has been forgotten. We're not your typical developer. We're not a national company. We're not publicly traded. We are three partners who are well positioned to handle the mix of challenges this property has faced. We spent near 7 years working with the city and with neighbors to come up with the right solution. We've made a number of concessions as a show of goodwill. First, the city asked us for $2 million. Then they asked us that we develop a youth soccer league complex on site at our cost on top of the $2 million. Then they changed their mind about the soccer. They raised the sum to $2.5 million. We had already planned to build a park and walking paths as part of the vision here. We're including CV Link through the development at our cost. $2.5 million was doable, but we made clear that we couldn't pay this out of pocket and up front. Those funds don't exist. The money would have to come from the sale of lots on the property. The city understood this in 2014 and 2015. Later, the number changed to $3 million. This number would make a successful project difficult, but 5 years had since passed since the deal we thought would take 2, and our interest at that point was just getting done. We found a way to make this work so long as we had time to pay this off piecemeal. 10 months later, the deal changed again, and without much warning. Now we're being asked to pay $3 million out of pocket up front or bear 7 3/4 interest on the unpaid balance with the property itself as collateral. After 7 years of trying to put this together in good faith with the community involved and opening our books to the city, with the previous city attorney present, sitting in the dark for 10 months after we had made a deal, only for the city to then come back with a new and essentially deal-killing offer, I have to say this deal doesn't work. We can't sign it.
Thank you, Mr. Havram. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Eric Taylor, then Mark Allen, then Joan Taylor.
Mayor Moon, members of the council, thanks for getting us on the agenda tonight. Where we think we got sideways that took us time here is this default provision. And from our perspective, last August, we were asked to put the note together. We put together what we thought was a commercially feasible note that protected the city and got you exactly what you asked for, $3 million at the end of 3 years. And we put a default provision in there. And that somehow got us translated sideways into what are you doing, having it accrue interest at the end of the 3 years, as opposed to just writing a check. And I've got Mark here, who's our attorney and can get into the details on why that doesn't work. The report that we got from staff, from Mr. Kotkin and from Marcus, to be blunt, absolutely fails. It's not financeable in the commercial world. We can't do it. If we wanted to do it just to get the project, it still wouldn't work. We can't make it work. Even if we had the money, even if we could write you a check, it doesn't work. So this whole program, as Matt just said, is we're using housing to solve the problem, and we need people to buy the houses in order to get the money to make this work. We can't just keep on writing checks. That's just how it works. So I'd like Mark to maybe explain a little bit of the legal background here. I think it's important.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, next speaker is Mark Allen.
I'm Mark Allen. I represent the developer in this particular matter. I wanted to ask, first of all, did you get a copy of the letter that I sent to Mr. Kotkin outlining our position? You all have that? Okay. So I'm not going to go over the things that are in that letter, but I will say the following. Number one, if you read the letter, we've been very clear on what we're able to do and what we're not able to do. One of the things we're not able to do, will not be able to do, and no one, as far as I know, as long as the development is in this posture, will be able to do, is to give you a $3 million cash check at the end of 3 years. We believe that it is most likely that we will have paid off $1 million to $2 million at the end of 3 years, and then we might be able to pay off the balance. But if we are in the unfortunate position where we haven't sold anything, neither we nor any other developer will ever be able to give you a $3 million check, period. What we can do is we can write a note which allows us to pay it off at a fixed amount over time. You should be able to sell that note, which is exactly what we offered the city over a year ago. And we've been consistent about this. I can explain a little bit about the regulatory regime, but because of the way
bank and financial regulations work right now, it is impossible for any developer to make the commitment that you have asked us to make. Do you have any questions?
This is not a...
Oh, that's right. You've set it up so, because we'll be here for the hearing if you have any questions. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen. Next speaker is Joan Taylor, and Joan Taylor is our last speaker, City Clerk.
I have one more, Ed Doobie.
Okay, if anyone else wishes to speak, please put a card in at this time.
Mayor, members of the council, my name is Joan Taylor. I represent the local Sierra Club as the conservation chairwoman. And I'd like to speak and urge you not to grant another extension to the Serena Park development. Basically, we have a willing seller. The land in question that is ready to be bought for mitigation is important, not only for the city's entry in open space, but also to ensure the corridor for peninsular bighorn sheep. And basically, we ask you to enforce the mitigation. Developer bought this land knowing what the mitigation was, had certain quid pro quos, but here he is, and it's time to have him pay and have the public benefit of that mitigation bought. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Taylor. And the last speaker, the name's not come up yet.
It's Ed Doobie, and then followed by T. Jones. She's
Okay.
now here.
Good evening. My name is Ed Doobie. I am also on the board of the Friends of the Palm Springs Mountains, and I would just like to finish some of the comments that the board had prepared that Nikki was reading to you earlier. To reiterate, this is an action that has been made on several past projects that provides a benefit to the developer and is not in the public interest. The usual argument is that the money is not available or the bank will not provide the loan, but in reality, the truth is it makes their land less valuable with this expense up front, thereby denying them the ability to make a significant profit when they resell, which is often the case. It is our understanding that Serena Park was bought for $1 million, so even when combined with the $3 million, this development is set to make a huge profit with an agreement that has 386 approved homes. The preservation of Chino Canyon is still an ongoing effort, one that the city will be taking over, that we sincerely hope you will continue to support by enforcing the density transfer provision for the public benefit as opposed to the developers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is T. Jones. Anyone after Ms. Jones?
I apologize for being late. I had to pick up my son. It's all his fault. Just very briefly, my name's T. Jones. My family's had property here before I was born. We're a long Palm Springs family. I've seen the growth. I'm in favor of the Serena Park development simply because I've driven that area, walked that area. When we were kids, we actually used to shoot out there. I think it's an improvement. I think it's an improvement for the city, and it'll certainly take away the blighted area. So I'm just in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Seeing no other speakers at this time, we will close the first set of public comments. Next item is City Council Subcommittee and City Manager's comments and reports. First, David, City Manager, would you give a quick report on the Splash House? And I know there were some complaints last week, but they were taken care of fairly quickly. And could you give us an update on that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As you know, last weekend, the weekend before last was Splash House, and it will come again in early August. What we did have quite a few complaints on noise on the first night on Friday coming from the Air Museum. Despite our original efforts, what we did realize, and with help of the police that were on the ground there for the following evening, some of the modifications that we made, and the complaints were significantly less. We had basically virtually just a couple versus 50 the night before. So I think maybe we have found the sweet spot in terms of the noise for the museum event, and the rest of the event that happened at the pool during the day did not seem to be problematic. The chief is here. Chief, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Good evening. The city manager is exactly right. The first night, there was about 50 calls for service. We regrouped with the event coordinators at the Air Museum before the event actually occurred, and it really knocked it all the way down to literally 2 calls for service for the next 2 days in a row.
And then at the pool parties during the day, how did that go?
That worked out very well. We changed our approach in having fixed officers there full-time instead of roving to address anything that occurred from the onset, and that worked out quite well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reddy. There's one other thing I want to address, and that is came to my attention this afternoon that something I've been doing the last couple of years has made some people uncomfortable. One, a couple of years ago when I was first in my office, I went to the city manager and he went to the chief of police because I was concerned that people were in my office at night. I have a lot of papers in my desk, which I now lock up. So I had some concerns. And so one thing I did is I went out and got a little system called a Blink camera, which I'm sure a lot of people have. And what the Blink does is you set this little camera up, and it's very obvious. It's 4 inches by 4 inches, and it's white, and it sits right there on the credenza at the side of the room. And I would turn it on at night when I left and turn it off in the morning when I came back in. And if anyone came into my office at night, it would do a 10-second video clip. It's capable of being changed to do up to 60-second video clips, but you can't make it do more than 60 seconds unless you get up and walk around the room again, and then it does 60 seconds and it stops and you have to get up. So apparently some people misunderstood what this was and what it was for and felt that I may have had the capability of recording people in my office in meetings. That never happened. I never did it, and actually physically, technologically, it's not possible. The only way to do this would be to, if someone came in and sat down for a meeting, I'd have to stand up and wave my arms, and then sit down, and every 10 seconds I'd have to get up and wave my arms again, or although I could set it to 60 seconds. But I think that would be sort of obvious that I was activating a recording system. So, however, it was brought to my attention. This made some people uncomfortable. Therefore, the city manager and the city attorney met with me today. I showed the city attorney and the city manager the app on my phone, and it showed that it was deactivated. In fact, I haven't really used it for the past year, and that there was no clips, nothing recorded, nothing on there. The whole system was dormant. So they recommended that I get rid of it. All it is 2 little pieces, so it's gone. The other thing I did some time ago is, quite a bit, long time ago, when the executive assistant for the mayor and the city council, her office is across the hall and down a ways, and she would she was coming to my office frequently and asking me, hey, so-and-so's on the phone, do you want to talk to them now? And I'd be on the phone, so it was sort of awkward. So I got a very inexpensive little intercom system where she could push a little button and say, hey, Mayor, so-and-so is on the phone, do you want to talk to him now? And I could push my button down and hold it and say, give me a few minutes, and then I'll take her name and number and I'll call him back. So, or she'd call me and say, hey, I've got some papers I need you to sign. Do you have a few minutes to sign them? So this kept us from walking back and forth, particularly her. And actually the system was very cheap off Amazon. You have to hold the button down to talk. And that's the only way it was ever used. I never used it to eavesdrop on anyone or to listen to what was going on in the executive assistant's office. Actually, technically, I don't know. I think it could do that without their knowledge. So obviously that made some people uncomfortable too. So this was only brought to my attention today. So when it was brought to my attention, I immediately removed them. However, I will say that there was no time did I ever record any meeting in my office. At no time did I ever eavesdrop on anything going on in the executive assistant's office. I never used these items for anything that would be that I feel would be improper. And I understand from the city manager that he's working together and putting together a policy that would say we can't do this anymore. So I guess that gets sort of complicated because people have cell phones, and you can actually turn your iPhone to record while people are in your office also. But as far as this, I probably should have gone to the city manager and said, hey, David, because I'm concerned people are coming to my office at night, I'm going to put this in, and I didn't do that. And I should have. Sorry. I should have done that. And on the intercom system, I thought everybody knew it was there. So these have been in place for some time, and I never used them for any purpose other than the practical aspects of security in my office at night when I wasn't there, and for communicating with the executive assistant when we needed to talk to each other. So that's really all I have to say on that issue. Mr. Cochran, do you want to make any comments on that?
I'm sorry, I was pushing the button to answer. No, I don't have any comments.
Okay. Any other city council subcommittees, more city council subcommittee and city managers' comments or reports? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a busy couple of weeks, so I want to begin with Riverside County Transportation Commission, which is frequently abbreviated to RCTC, and I apologize if I use the abbreviation instead of spelling it out. But at the last meeting of the Riverside County Transportation Commission, we received a report. There was no vote that was taken on this, but it was a truck mitigation study involving the city of Moreno Valley. In the eastern portion of the city of Moreno Valley, there is a large new warehousing district that is being created. It encompasses 2,610 acres and is envisioned to encompass over 40.6 million square feet of storage space immediately adjacent to Interstate 60. In the course of the report that we were given regarding mitigation fees that will be paid by the developers for this area for their impact on traffic, we received a report that tried to describe where the traffic impacts would be. And all of us in the Coachella Valley were quite alarmed at the study in that it indicated that traffic on Interstate 10 in the Coachella Valley would be minimal to non-existent. Most of us realize that trucks tend to travel east, and so this is something that did receive some negative impact from our reaction from pretty much unanimously across the Coachella Valley representatives. We will be watching this in the future. We certainly have no objection to the project, but we want to make sure that any mitigation that creates opportunities for new and enhanced roadways includes the Coachella Valley. Moving on, still on the theme of transportation, while the entire City Council was in Sacramento, I had an opportunity along with Mayor Pro Tem Roberts to attend 2 meetings with Caltrans, one on rail transit, and I am pleased that in the draft study for the statewide rail master plan, connecting rail to the Coachella Valley remains a part of that project. It is certainly, as I said at the last meeting, the 50 miles of track from Colton that the Union Pacific does not want to share is the main difficulty, but certainly Caltrans at the highest level is aware of the importance of rail transit in the Coachella Valley, and I think we have a partner who will be working with us to bring rail. We also met on preliminary planning for the relinquishment of Vista Chino from Caltrans' responsibility to the City of Palm Springs. That will give us greater control over traffic on Vista Chino. Of course, the negotiations now concern money and how much that we will receive from Caltrans over taking over responsibility for the maintenance. And lastly, in meeting with Caltrans, we expressed our concerns regarding the need to change law in California regarding the ability of cities to reduce traffic speeds on its roadways over and above the 5 miles limit that we can go below the average speed. And I was pleased to see that Caltrans was very well aware of this issue and is working currently with many large cities, and we offered our assistance as they move to working with smaller cities on giving greater flexibility to California cities to reduce speeds. It is needed, As we know, we have had far, far too many fatalities on our streets in Palm Springs, and much of those fatalities, regardless of the fact that the pedestrian was doing something they should not have done, had the speed of the driver been less, the driver would have had a greater opportunity to respond to the mistake of the pedestrian. A life would have been saved, and for the driver themselves, they would have been spared being responsible for a fatality. We had hoped, the mayor and I met with Lauren Skiver and her staff from Sunline, and they will be coming back on our July 11th meeting with a set of proposals that potentially will provide options to City Council to save the buzz system by turning Buzz over to Sunline. And I'm very pleased and looking forward to that meeting on July 11. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Roberts.
There's a mic. Mayor, I'm going to have Councilman Coors go before I do. That's okay?
Okay, Councilmember Coors.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I do want to follow up as sort of the lobby event subcommittee with some more of the report, and maybe I'll stop that after that in case other council members want to share their meetings, just so we do all that together. So first, I think most people know that the council was recognized on the Assembly and Senate floor as the first LGBT, I think, government of any kind anywhere that's all LGBT. And I know we all felt a little odd about being acknowledged for our sexual orientation and gender identity, but it wasn't about us, right? I think it's really about what Palm Springs is. And that was really clear in talking to many of the legislators, that we're a city that is still majority non-LGBT voters, where sexual orientation and gender identity just wasn't an issue. People were judged on their merits. And that's the kind of world I think we all want to live in. And that's really what we're being acknowledged for. And I think the other thing that is so important about it is, I think for many of us, well, probably 4 of us, one of us is significantly younger, we grew up at a time when there weren't any LGBT elected officials, or we grew up, at least for me in high school, thinking I'd never run for office because the one person who did it in San Francisco got killed in 9 months. So for LGBT kids in places like Bakersfield and Fresno, or even anywhere in the state, to have read about it, there are articles in Illinois about are being acknowledged, tells them that they can live whatever dream they want. And if they can't do it where they are, they can come to Palm Springs, because we welcome everyone here. So I thought that was really just something I wanted to share with the community. Now, of course, that was all about 15 minutes in 2 different parts of the legislature. And then we spent 2 days actually meeting with elected officials and representatives. Councilmember Middleton shared a number of them. So I want to share meetings I was part of, and I think both the other 3 members may have had some meetings if we didn't cover all of them. So I met with Assemblymember Evan Lowe, who's the LGBT Legislative Caucus Chair. There are 8 LGBT members. And we talked about how we could help on the 2 pieces of legislation the council has officially endorsed. One of them is a homeless youth bill to provide, I think it's $60 million for homeless youth-related programs that we can apply for if it's passed and signed into law. And we know that LGBT youth are 4 times more likely than non-LGBT youth to become homeless because of isolation, family rejection. And a lot of them, of course, from all over the country come to California. We also supported a bill that adds sexual orientation and gender identity to the criteria at the highest level for the state and Department of Aging to work on when it comes to isolation of seniors. So one thing that was suggested was to make sure we get those letters of support into the authors of the legislation and the next committee that's hearing it. So I just want to make sure that we do that. So that was one thing. Councilmember Middleton mentioned that we met with the leadership from the California League of Cities, and we learned a number of things in that meeting. $500 million is in the new state budget that was just approved for homeless-related services. That was not happening, and it was the mayors of the 11 largest cities took it upon themselves to really aggressively push to get that in the budget. And it'll be important that we apply for that grant funding when it becomes available, and it's the new fiscal year. So we expect that to be in the next couple of months. The other thing we learned was there's currently funding for zoning updates, specific plans, general plan updates. We already put money in our budget for a zoning update, but we may be able to get that money back and use it for other purposes. And I know we've talked about wanting to do a general plan update, but it's so expensive. But we may have the potential to get that money from the state as long as your general plan update increases the likelihood and ability to provide more housing, especially entry-level housing. So I think that's something we really want to look into, and I want to make to share that with the housing subcommittee, which is Council Members Holstage and Middleton. Let's see, the next meeting was Councilmember Holstage, and I, along with the city manager, met with Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, who, while he doesn't represent Palm Springs, represents most of the Coachella Valley. And we got a really great update about how quickly now movement is happening for the Salton Sea to address what is a looming health and environmental crisis. The bond measure that just passed provides the funding, and the state is now moving forward with some great projects, and it looks like all that is really moving forward. And we'll start to see some of those projects that are now shovel-ready move forward soon. So that was really great to hear. In addition, we met with the person in the Secretary of Natural Resources, John Laird, who the next day, who talked to us about that as well. And I'm sure they're going to come down in the fall to do another presentation on the Salton Sea. But we also talked about open space money, particularly focused on Oswald Canyon and how we can help get grant money to try and come up with some of the costs it will take to preserve Oswald Canyon, which is something we'd like to see happen. So that was a very productive meeting, I thought, went very well. The city manager and I met with State Controller Betty Yee and her senior staff about pension issues and unfunded pension liability. We got a lot of kudos for what we've done in the last little over a year, putting over $11 million away in a pension reserve fund as a really smart thing to do. There were some suggestions that we might want to actually invest that money differently to get a higher rate of interest, and is going to set up a meeting with the city manager and their key contact at CalPERS to work with us on some options. And I know later tonight we're talking about paying down some, prepaying CalPERS to save interest. So I thought it was a really productive meeting on that. And then the last meeting I'm going to report out on is Mayor Pro Tem Roberts and I and the city manager met with the Speaker of the Assembly, Anthony Rendon. We had a very productive meeting. And a lot of it was talking about how a lot of the efforts they make, and they're looking at restarting some redevelopment efforts tied to housing, tend to focus on the larger cities and tend to focus on places that have these very intricate and extensive public transit plans, and not places that have, just bus service. And that it was really important that all the cities could participate, that we have a council and a city that wants to do affordable and worker housing, and that we should have access to those funds. And he was very receptive, and we're going to follow up on those meetings as well. So I think that's all I have on that. So I'll sort of stop and go back after Mayor Pro Tem Roberts. But if there's other stuff on the lobby visits in Sacramento, it might be a good time for folks to weigh in.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Coors and Councilwoman Middleton covered a lot of our trip. I would just add a few things in to that. It was wonderful to be acknowledged by our Assembly and our Senate. It was an exciting moment for us all. And as Councilman Coors pointed out, for me it felt a little odd being acknowledged for that. It's not something we think about every day. Who we are, about our sexual preferences in terms of when we're sitting up here. We're a lot more focused on homeless needs and keeping the budget up, right side up, and keeping our community headed in the right direction. But, the things that Councilman Coors pointed out became very important, and it's more about what we represent in leadership in areas where the LGBT community is not accepted, and that's the message that we want to go out. And I think we as a city as a city as a whole do that, and we send that message well. And one of the things one of the ways that we do that is by being an international city, and we're loved internationally. So people come here, and our brand is known as, having LGBT, but more than anything, just a great place to be and a great quality of life. And that's what I noticed when we were being honored by the Assembly and by the Senate. Not so much that they were excited about the LGBT aspects, but more they were just thrilled that we were here from Palm Springs. They were excited about Palm Springs. And for all of us who travel, we know we get those great receptions wherever we go. And we hope to keep it that way always. As Councilman Kors pointed out, we met with a number of Assembly and other state staff. I myself, meeting with other council members, met with Chad Mays, our Assemblyman, and our Senator, Jeff Stone. We talked about potential dollars for housing, affordable housing, potential dollars for homeless issues. The state has released, or will be releasing, billions of dollars to help with homeless issues. And they were fascinated in the success that Palm Springs has had with our homeless population. So we wanted them to remember us and our projects going forward as those dollars start to get released. And they very specifically asked that we send back the projects we're working on so that they can keep them close by. And hopefully that will equate to dollars for us. We met with the State Historical Officer, looking for dollars for preservation with respect to the Plaza Theater. We were informed there were none. It was disappointing, but we did talk about other things. And again, just making these connections is so important for us to actually go to the state, meet our legislators, and have them know who we are and what we care about. I also want to talk about the cannabis subcommittee. I have a head cold, so forgive me. The cannabis subcommittee met with the cities of Cathedral City and Desert Hot Springs, and we're the Tri-City Cannabis
The Emerald Triangle.
The Emerald Triangle, we'll call it, okay. And we met just to discuss issues of how the three cities are dealing with administering the licenses and dealing with the growth of cannabis in our three cities. And we discussed taxation, we discussed auditing procedures, we discussed methods of collecting, and it was hugely helpful to meet with other cities and know what they're doing and to compare notes, and we will continue to do that. I was surprised with the amount of good information that we got from that, and our city attorney and our city manager joined us for that as well. And last but not least, I'd like to direct the attention of the council and the public to the mimeograph image of the city seal above our heads. And if you turn around in the back of the room, and as part of the upcoming full restoration and remodel of this room, we will finally be adding the city seal to this room, lest people forget where they are when they're sitting here. But certainly for those tuning in on television, they may not know what they're watching. So we thought this would be helpful. But we wanted you to see that tonight, and particularly the council, if you have any comments on those seal locations and sizes, we put those up as samples. And I have more, but I think the rest of the council wants to talk about our great visit to the state.
Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think pretty much every meeting I had has been reported on. I just wanted to specifically thank Councilmember Kors for setting up a lot of these meetings. It's important to have power in Sacramento and for us to be there and lobby for our fair share for our region of state funding. A lot of times our region gets left behind, bills leave us out. Larger cities really don't include cities like ours in terms of funding. And so we wanted to go there and express some of those concerns about how bills can better include us, meet with our representatives, and learn about how we can get more funding on projects that are important to the city of Palm Springs and the people of Palm Springs. And a lot of that was thanks to Councilmember Cors's connections in working in Sacramento and doing legislative work throughout his career. Everyone knew him there, and it was great to be there with you, and thank you for setting up a lot of the meetings, because we met with the secretary of the California Natural Resources Agency, you met with the speaker, a lot of really important people in Sacramento, and that's important for our city, that we can better represent our residents. So thank you for that. I think one other meeting that I had that wasn't reported, Councilmember Middleton and I met with the California Housing Finance Agency to learn about financing and the housing bonds that's available going forward for entry-level housing, multifamily housing, a lot of different housing options that just aren't being built in Palm Springs, and there are a lot of good options for lenders as well as developers and private developers. Since we know that's what the need is going forward, I think we might have some private developers in this room right now. So we got that information, and we're going to share that in our Affordable Housing Subcommittee and make that public so that we can get those resources that exist through the state into Palm Springs as a mechanism for developers and for our residents ultimately. That's all I have on Sacramento. Did anyone else want to report on Sacramento?
Councilman Kors, you were in queue again. Did you want to speak again?
And Mr. Mayor, I would just say that being able to accompany the council, the important part, at least from the administrative side, I would just note that whether it's Caltrans or CalPERS and several of the other agencies, having the connections that we now have people we actually can contact, who we can ask questions and get information that we need. And in addition to that, just the idea of the opportunity for different grants that now we had that before that we went there. So all that is extremely important.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reddy. Councilmember Kors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, regular report stuff.
Push the button. Would you push the button again?
I'm sorry. There. Last Friday, I attended and spoke at a press conference by the East-West Alliance that was in Cathedral City that was calling for an end to the inhumane and outrageous policy from the Trump administration separating children from their parents. While we are relieved to learn today that that has finally stopped through an executive order by Mr. Trump, families, including children, are going to still be detained and kept in holding facilities, yet unknown what the conditions that will be in, when they're seeking asylum, as they have the legal right to do, as a result of fleeing from unspeakable violence and persecution. We also do not know how this is going to all come down, so it's something obviously we need to watch. In addition, last week, Attorney General Jeff Sessions ruled that gang violence and domestic abuse are not grounds any longer to grant asylum to immigrants who arrive in this country asking for safety for fear of violence and murder if they were to return home. Attorney General Sessions called this private violence and not grounds for asylum in the United States. The last thing I want to add is the Trump administration just pulled out of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. As a result of this, Councilmember Holstage and I would ask that at our next meeting, we put on a resolution where we can condemn these practices and urge Congress, the Senate, and the administration to take action to undo these outrageous efforts. Desert Community Energy, just to make a nice little segue. So I'm a representative on our new power program, Desert Community Energy. Some of you might have received notices in the mail. They're sort of going out in phases just about now. And just to remind folks, we actually made our decision at the last council meeting. A lot of people don't read mail if it's not really personal, like a birthday card. So please read this because it's important information. And what I'll tell you is you're automatically put into this program where you will get your energy for slightly less, anywhere from 1 to 2% of your actual total bill, 3% of the power part of your bill. That's greener and cleaner than what you get from Edison. Edison still will provide it, service it, we pay them for that. But you also have the option to do what the city did, which is to opt up for 100% carbon-free power, and you will pay the exact same amount as you're currently paying Edison now. It is not more expensive. So it's really important people do that. If you want to opt up, you have the chance to do that. If you like Edison to still buy you the less green, less clean power, you can choose to do that as well. So just wanted people to make sure they notice that. Other thing, which I've raised before, but I think if we can get a plan maybe by the next council meeting, is we know that there are going to be grants available for landscapers and gardeners to exchange their gas-powered leaf blowers for electric ones. And we know we can't just mail to people who have business licenses. We need to do a pretty strong outreach to all the landscapers or gardeners. They can get these less polluting, quieter, electric, battery-operated leaf blowers for a fraction of the cost. Actually, the grant program is being increased this year, but we need to do the outreach because it happens over the summer, and we don't want them to miss out on the opportunity. And it's a great chance to do education. And as we are doing all the education we are and working with our diversity consultant tied to district elections in English, Spanish, this is a great opportunity to make sure we're reaching out to those in the business. Two more quick things. I'd like at the next council meeting, and by the way, I'll write with Councilmember Holstage, we're working with Cathedral City, the resolution, so staff doesn't need to do anything on that. And I'll write this as well, which is a letter of support for Senate Bill 1394, just passed the Senate. It's going to the Assembly, and it would prohibit signature gatherers getting paid per signature. It would let them get paid hourly for their work, but not per signature, with the number of documented cases of falsifying signatures, duplicating signatures on other petitions, people misrepresenting what people are signing has become a huge problem in the state. And so people will still get paid for their work, but not per signature. And I think we've seen enough petitions in this city where we've heard those problems, and I think it would be very good for us to take a support position. And just because I started with LGBT stuff, I will end with one thing, which is one of us actually, not the whole group, got honored on Monday as one of a very few number of people in Sacramento for Pride Month, and that's our council member, Lisa Middleton, who is the first transgender elected political official in the state of California, and it's a well-deserved honor, so congratulations, Lisa. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to report the work that I've done over the last 2 weeks for the city. The mayor and I are on the grants and sponsorship subcommittee. We got binders this thick, 2 of them. We went through all of those, and we got a lot of good applications, and so we're working on that. So that will come forward. We're going to meet again, and then that will come forward to council to allocate. So the people in the community who applied for those grants and sponsorships, that is coming forward. I went to the Parks and Rec Commission meeting as the liaison yesterday. It was a really interesting meeting. There's a lot of public comment. I learned all about the tennis versus pickleball debate that's raging in our community, though it sounds like a false debate because people like to play both and we want both in our city. And so we also discussed the Tiny Tots program, and so I had volunteered for the city council to meet with the school district and meet with the Parks and Rec Commission and talk to the parents. And so the school district brought forward a revised proposal that met all of the requests of the city council to include a space for every single child currently in that program. They're actually volunteering to pay their own LCAP funding through the school district to subsidize the kids that might not qualify by income for state preschool. They're offering to pay for 1 year their own funds to subsidize those kids who might have higher income parents. And so overall, the Parks and Rec Commission was really impressed by the proposal because it provides better educational services that's streamlined into the school district's educational plan for students. It prepares kids for transitional kindergarten and kindergarten in a way that, though our program is great and excellent, and I know it's been an important part of our community, this is an offer for the school district to provide, in my opinion, better educational services and actually do that for the city. And so that was a unanimous vote by the Parks and Rec Commission, and so we're going to city staff to negotiate that, and then that will be brought forward to council. I went to the CVAG Homelessness Committee meeting this morning, and we got a report about the Caltrans. There was a homeless encampment on Caltrans land in Coachella. You might have seen it in the Desert Sun. In the past, Caltrans has spent $500,000 clearing those encampments or more, and so that commission is working with Caltrans to get some of that money or even the land to go to homelessness and not just clearing people down the way. We heard about trends for homelessness and housing, and we actually are going to have Path of Life Ministries report to this council about the work that they're doing for Housing First. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the community that the city and CVAG is not doing anything on homelessness because we no longer have a shelter, but Path of Life Ministries is doing a lot of really important work using Housing First and rapid rehousing vouchers to get people into immediate housing right away that's more long-term and sustainable. So they're going to give a report to this council next council meeting with all of those trends and figures. One thing really interesting is they're seeing more and more people who are homeless who are over 70. And so they're going to give us those numbers, but just a lot of seniors in Palm Springs who are affected. Finally, I'm on the CAP Riverside board, and I know our staff sent around a list of cooling center locations for residents in Palm Springs, and just to announce that to the public, since we're getting up there in the heat, 110 or so, and so for people who need to go to a cooling center, we have Demuth Community Park, the LGBT Community Center, the Palm Springs Library, the Wellwood Murray Library, James O. Jesse, and Well in the Desert. So all of those locations are available if you need to go cool down, and those locations are listed on our website. And I have no further comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Reddy, did you have comments?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to note that I wanted to just recognize, if I could, our finance director, Jeffrey Keel, who's been with us for 10 years, and he's in the audience, and this is